Welcome back, Nick Lenz, Comic Corner Classic/Non-Classic. This is episode number 897 and Doubleshot number 791. Like I said in the last episode, two Batman trades. One of whom has a very controversial issue. First one, it is Batman Volume 7, The Wedding. Yeah, a wedding that did not happen, despite the fact DC teased this thing for 2 years. Yeah, and my friend Tivia put issue 50, which has the wedding, well, it's listed as the wedding, put it on his worst comic list because the wedding never happened. Of course, this is done by Tom King, and this book not only collects this book collects issues 47, Batman Volume 3, issues 45 to 50, and a story from DC number 0. Tom King does all the writing for this particular issues. And the artwork in here is done by Michael Jenny, who does a couple issues in here, along with the issue 50. Tony S. Daniel, who actually is the first artist in here, along with Clayman, Sutter Ferreira, John Lavsty, and Danny Miki. There's also a boatload of guests. So this is for issue 50, mind you. And so some of these people I've actually met in person. Yeah, Jose Luis Garcia-Lopez. I met this guy a couple times. Really nice guy to meet. Becky Cohen, Jason Fobach, Frank Miller, Lee Barbagio, New Adams. I actually saw him this past weekend. I met Amanda Connor, Ralph Albuquerque, Andy Kubert, Tim Sale, Paul Pope, Mitch Gardis, Ty Templeton, Julie Jones, who after this does the Catwoman series, David Finch. I have met this guy, very nice guy to meet. I even told him he was my favorite artist, and I had a long conversation with him. Jim Lee, Scott Williams, Greg Capullo, Lee Weeks, Trish Marvahall, Brad Anderson, Alex Sinclair, Hi-Fi, Paul Mounts, Jose Fariba, Karen Smith, and Faco Pasita. Yeah, I should point out though for issue 50, there's a bunch of these like splash pages in here, like one-page splashes of just various pin-ups they put in the book. Done by various different artists who basically have worked on Batman over the years. Though I can't remember Amanda Connor actually drawing a Batman comic. The only reason I think they put her on the book because she was the artist for the Harley Quinn comic, and she has drawn Batman in the past, but not in the main title. Becky Cohen has. Yeah. First you have The Gift, which takes up the first like 3 issues in here, and this is also Tony Sand's return to Batman title. First time he's drawn a Batman book since he left Detective Comics back in 2012. Of course, these issues came out roughly in 2018. Yeah, because it comes out twice a month. Yep. It's just a 3-parter called The Gift, with Booster Gold guest starring for his first appearance since the Booster Shot storyline. Yeah, this actually was his next appearance right after that. And I'm glad the fact they do credit Dan Jurgens as the creator of Booster Gold, because he is. Excuse me. And yes, I've met Dan Jurgens. This one is a weird time travel story. Booster Gold exits ultimately in the past, though he does get fixed at the very end, where apparently Bruce Wayne's parents don't die in the valley. They die years later than they're supposed to, though the thing eventually gets fixed a bit later. And of course, then we have a 2-parter called The Best Man, which features guest appearance by the Joker of all people, making his first appearance in the Batman title in present day, mind you, not counting Wardrobe Mills. This is probably the Joker's first appearance in this book since Endgame. Yeah, it's been a while. Though his last appearance prior to this particular 2-parter, yeah, this also had a one-shot that took place just prior to this. But prior to these issues and the one-shot, his last physical appearance prior to appearing in here was actually in Dark Knight's Metal, The Forge. Yeah, with one of those, the first of 2 one-shots that led into the crossover. It's not a little 2-parter, but it's actually really good. Michael Jenny is because of drawing it. As for issue 50, now I talked to Clayman about this particular issue. Now, I told him I didn't like the fact that the wedding didn't happen, but even he agreed with me. He didn't have no reaction because when I told him that despite the fact I didn't like the fact the wedding didn't happen, I was not going to send Tom King death threats. Yeah, even he agreed that was stupid. And him having getting a bodyguard was kind of ridiculous too, because this guy wasn't the CIA. And yet he gets a bodyguard at a Comic-Con, which really makes no goddamn sense. Even he agreed about that. Now, I should point out, though, about this, despite the fact that I didn't like that the way it didn't happen, the best thing I found about the issue itself was the artwork. The artwork is fantastic. I didn't get a chance to tell Clayman about this because I love Clayman's artwork. Here's an example of the awesome Clayman artwork. It's just so good. Probably the best page of the whole book. My friend Tivia basically posted this page on Facebook. Yeah, it was this very scene right here, the best scene in the whole comic book, and the best drawn too. Clayman should get an award for how well he drew this 2-page spread. Yeah, because that was the best thing about issue 50 was the fact that it had really, really good artwork, and the fact that he took his time with this thing. Yeah. But he also told me this is actually halfway through his run, because he told me that this is supposed to be a 105-issue run. Yeah, and this run is only going on for, I'd say, about almost 3 years now. And he's done he's past issue 60 by now. And yeah, he just passed issue 60, so he should up to 70 pretty soon. Yeah, so 105 issues, so roughly about 5 years he's supposed to be on this series. Excuse me. Even he said the reason why the wedding happened here because it would not make sense to happen halfway through this run, so he said to hold off for a little bit more for the wedding, despite the fact that DC had advertised this wedding happening in this very issue for 2 years. Well, actually for like a full year. DC advertised because, well, this comic was coming out twice a month. So yeah, this has been teased since issue 24. Yes, for like almost a full year this was teased. And never happened. Nope. This is actually one of the 3 weddings that actually happened last year. It was supposed to happen. It was advertised last year, along with the wedding of Colossus and Kitty Pryde, and the wedding of the Thing and Alicia Masters. Here's the thing. Guess how many of those weddings actually happened? Only one. And that was the wedding of the Thing and Alicia Masters. Because Lancelot knew that if he's going to advertise something, actually have it happen. Though it did happen, but very awkwardly too. Yeah, he kind of froze time for that one. The artwork I gotta give basically in this book a 10 out of 10. It's fantastic. I love the writing in here, but because of the controversy surrounding issue 50, I'm just gonna give the book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. We'll give this a 10, but yeah. Though I've heard from one particular viewer that he thinks that the book has gone slightly downhill since this particular book, where Tom King is playing it safe and not doing what he did prior to the wedding. I kind of disagree with that because I think the book is still good. It's just that it's probably not up to the stuff it was prior to the wedding, but it's still a good book nonetheless. I do enjoy Tom King's work. Alright, now move on to the writer of Dark Knight's Metal. From a book that was the only book to get canceled in 2017. Yeah, that's something kind of weird though. Like last year we had like a good almost 10 titles get canceled last year from DC Comics, and this was the only one to get canceled in 2017. Isn't that weird? I'm sure for a lot of people this is weird. We have the final trade for All-Star Batman, coming from Scott Snyder and the artwork by Raphael Albuquerque, who is the artist for pretty much this entire storyline. Now, Albuquerque is also the writer, also writing this thing. He writes the backup story, which I'll get to in a minute. We also have Raphael Savoni, who also comes co-writing as well. The artwork, the other artist that Albuquerque does his issues is Sebastian Ferrari, and Albuquerque does the cover art. This is known as the First Ally, and this collects the last 5 issues of this series, issues 10 to 14. The First Ally, it was simply put Batman's ally before he hired Alfred. It's kind of a weird story. But it's an interesting one nonetheless to have meeting with the First Ally who wears this armored suit and he actually kills somebody who was briefly associated with Batman. And apparently this guy has a face he looks exactly like Alfred, which I thought was a little weird. Yeah. The backup story in here is just dealing with some Russians and some Ice Queen. It's known as, the backup story, believe it or not, it's called The Killers-in-Law. And Scott Snyder does not write the backup features one. It's done by Sebastian Ferrama, and it's actually really damn good artwork. I would love it if he do the main Batman title release, Detective Comics, because yeah, look at this. This is really damn good artwork. And those of you wondering about this panel arrangement, like with the whole location thing, yeah, that's been a staple of this book since issue 1. Since John Romita Jr. was the original artist in the book. Yeah. This is actually really good. I'm giving this book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. Interesting way to end the series, though. This particular story was a lead in. It was one of the setups into Dark Knight's Metal. Final thoughts on this particular series and why I thought the series ended. Well, here's the thing about this particular series. When it started back in 2016, at least that in the this was actually one of the very few titles not coming out twice a month, because a lot of DC titles will come out twice a month. This is actually one of the very few that wasn't. Though DC was charging this book $5 an issue for the entire run. Yeah, if you look at the original cover price for every single issue, it's always $4.99. And the reason for that is because of the backup story. This had 3 backup stories in 14 issues. Excuse me, the original one was The Cursed Wheel. This was basically a backup story for The Signal, who did appear in the first story arc. And of course we have a briefing with a Russian, which kind of led to this particular backup feature, and that was basically it. Though, here's the thing about The Cursed Wheel. That storyline was collected twice. First, in the original trade of this particular trade series, which was... I'm trying to remember, I think it was like... I don't think it's in here. The first trade for this particular trade series, yeah. It was collected in the first one, which had the ridiculous cover of Batman with a big batarang. And this was John Romita Jr. Now, I do agree that he was definitely a good choice to draw Batman, because John Romita Jr. is known for doing a dark art style, and that fits Batman perfectly well. And I think he drew Batman well. The problem I had with the first storyline, it's called My Worst Enemy. That's basically the storyline. My problem with the storyline was the fact Scott Snyder retconned something in that particular thing that Peter J. Tomasi did roughly like just... I think it was just about 2 years. Yeah, it was actually about 2 years prior to that very story coming out. Yeah, there was a storyline from the series Batman and Robin when the series was briefly retitled to, on the cover, to Batman Two-Face. It was a 5-part storyline that involved Peter Tomasi giving Two-Face a new origin story for like no reason. And the storyline ended with the apparent death of Two-Face, implying the storyline implied that Two-Face committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. And the guy remained dead for a good, I'd say about 2 or 3 years. And then by First Ally, Two-Face is alive and well. No explanation of why. And I haven't had a chance to meet Scott Snyder, so I don't know why he did this for. And plus, he had, in that opening story, he had the Penguin, White, I think it was Great White Shark, and I'm trying to think who was that. Oh yeah, Black Mask. Oh yeah, and they appear in this very story arc. We also see the return of KG Beast. I believe this was his second appearance in this continuity, along with Black Spider, which I believe for him, that was actually his first appearance in this continuity, because he had not appeared in a long time, probably not since the 90s. Yeah, those who know who Black Spider is, he was a vigilante of Batman that captured early on back in the 70s, and he spent a good period of time with the Suicide Squad until he died. Yeah. And plus, the character himself also he was referenced in Batman Arkham Origins as one of the hitmen who was going to be hired by the Joker to kill Batman. But he was rejected. Yeah, he was one of several characters rejected in story. They don't explain why he was rejected, but at least he was referenced. Though the characters he hired were Deathstroke, Deadshot, Bane, Copperhead, and the Electrocutioner. Yeah, those that are curious, Electrocutioner has never appeared in this continuity at all. No explanation of why. It's particularly a little bizarre, the fact he's never appeared in this continuity. He's an odd character in and of himself, though. Mostly, despite the fact, here's the thing about Electrocutioner. He's mostly a character who showed up Batman comics a couple times, and then he moved over to the Vigilante before he got killed off. Yeah. Now, was his title a terrible title? No, it was not. It's just that the problem was, I think for a lot of people, why they didn't buy it as much. I mean, Scott Snyder was not the problem of the book. The problem why the book probably didn't sell too well, and why DC decided to end the book at the 14 issues. And here's my personal theory. It was the price tag. That it was my personal theory of why the series ended, because it probably wasn't selling too well. That, and probably that's as far as probably Scott Snyder wanted to take the series. Now, from what I had heard about this particular series was coming out, these were stories Scott Snyder wanted to do in Batman, but wasn't able to do because he basically kept doing event after event after event in the book. Big epic stories. He wanted to do, this is stories he wanted to do, and just put in this series. Yeah. I mean, it does feel like definitely another Batman spin-off title, and it's well written. Yeah, Scott Snyder is known for being a very good writer. Now, unlike what he did in Batman, where he sets up early on and gets spoiled later, this series, he didn't do that. No, he didn't. Excuse me. This is by far the only book I can think of he's done recently where he's done that. He does do it in the pages of Justice League. I'm glad if he brings back the style he brought from Batman over to that. And here, he doesn't do that. He just basically does like three. I mean, the next story that came right after My Own Worst Enemy was Ends of the Earth, which was a storyline which had a few different artists on it and had characters like Mr. Freeze. Yeah, Batman taking Mr. Freeze in Alaska. He also appeared by Poison Ivy. Heck, even Ra's al Ghul appeared in that storyline, wearing a suit and carrying a machine gun. And just by sheer coincidence, when the storyline was coming out, we had the League of Shadows storyline going on at the same exact time in Detective Comics, and Ra's al Ghul was basically in this traditional Neil Adams look from the 70s. You know, the open shirt and carrying a sword. Yeah, that's a Neil Adams design. He basically has kept the design for many years. Unknown why he decided to put on a suit in the pages of All-Star Batman, as far as I know, there's no explanation for that. Though one person described this book as Scott Snyder and his friends, because the only artist to work in the book I could think of aside from Jeremy Jr. and Robert Albuquerque was Jock. Jock did the second story arc for the series, and he was actually one of two artists who did the second story arc, but it was a really damn good one. In my opinion, that's the best part of the series, is the stories. The stories are just that damn good. Though, in the case of this one, unlike the first two, which was told really well, this one was a bit of a letdown from the last couple of story arcs. That's just my honest opinion when it comes to that. But this was an interesting way to end the series, and yeah, it's by far the only Batman series I've reviewed where I reviewed all the trades for it. Yes, the only one. None of the other Bat series I've done for. I haven't done Batman and Robin because there's still one trade I haven't reviewed yet, and that's White Knight. I review all the rest of the trades. I review all the trades for the second Flame, but not all the trades released for the first Flame. Oh yeah, there is one other series I have reviewed all the trades for, and that's Batman the Dark Knight. So this is by far the second Batman series I've done that for. No other series I can think of I've done that for. I mean, not counting limited series. Not counting that, these are ongoing series. So this is the second one I've done it for. First Dark Knight, then this one. Yeah, I keep thinking I should do more, but who the heck knows. And I'm sure a lot of people probably notice this when I do these reviews lately. They're just basically reviews of finales for series. You get my final thoughts overall on these series, like the finale for the Justice League run, the finales for X-Men Gold and Blue, or some other writers' runs. Yeah, that's just by sheer coincidence. It just happened to be that way. So yeah, that's really it for this particular review. My next review is going to be on 2 Star Wars trades. One is the end of this ongoing series. The other is going to be a mini series, okay? But you'll find what they are next review, okay? But you see you there. Bye.